It is my absolute pleasure, my honor, to be joined today by one of the world's finest musicians, Mike Keneally. Mike, thank you for joining me.
Golly, Brian, thank you. My pleasure, and thanks for that intro.
You've played with a ton of people, starting really getting on the map with being in Frank Zappa's last touring band. And you've played with incredible people like Joe Satriani, recently Devin Townsend. Would you give me a little retrospective of your career? Give me a little retrospective, please.
Okay, well, certainly in terms of anyone being aware of me or what I do, Frank Zappa was the first thing that thrust me into any kind of spotlight, which is a pretty unbelievable way to start a career, because he was who I grew up idolizing from the time that I was 9. And then I stayed involved in the Zappa orbit until around the mid-90s through projects with the Zappa family and being in Dweezil and Ahmet's band, Z, for a number of years too. And then in the mid-90s, 96, I joined Steve Vai's band, played with him until the early 2000s. Just focused on solo work for a few years until I joined this band Death Clock, which is an outgrowth of the Adult Swim show Metalocalypse. And while I was in Death Clock, Joe Satriani came calling. We had known each other from when I was in Steve Vai's band, and we were touring on these G3 package tours. So ended up joining Joe's band and recording and touring with him for 9 years. And then just last year started touring with Devin Townsend because I co-produced his most recent album, Empath, which is one of the things that I'm most grateful for in terms of projects that I've been involved with in my life. I love that album. I love working with Dev. So that's I guess that's the thumbnail sketch, but I've worked with a lot of different bands in the studio, a lot of different artists. So it's pretty amazing to me that I'm now in this position of being able to do projects with people like this.
Tell me about MFTJ. Tell my audience what it's all about.
Okay, delighted. Scott Shore is somebody that I met through Marco Miniman, who was the drummer in Joe Satriani's band, and also did a huge amount of work with me on albums like Scambot 1 and Wing Beat Fantastic. So he was working with Scott Shore and Scott's label Lazy Bones Recordings, and Scott was living in New Zealand at the time, and Satriani was coming through town. And so just went out to dinner a couple of times with Scott Shore and just hit it off on a personal level. So he said, what if I send you these rhythm tracks that I'm doing, and you just go in the studio and just be completely right-brained about it. Don't worry about writing, so to speak. Just I did a day of that, of just the guitar and keyboards on 11 tunes. And then I sent those tracks back to Scott Shore, because he was living in Australia by this point, recording in the East County of San Diego. So being together in the same studio at the same time wasn't an option. We have to work remotely. But it really worked in the case of this project. I sent him those tracks. He then did the thing that he does, which is go put on his mining helmet and find the gold nuggets in all this stuff and turn those things into hooks. And the end result is nothing like either of us have ever heard before. It's really uncategorizable, but it's because his rhythm tracks have so much propulsion and coolness to them. It really moves, It kind of fits into a thing that I've noticed over the last, say 15, 20 years of more. You can really get away with a lot musically if it's and texturally and sonically, as long as there's this forward motion, this propulsion to it. Modern pop music is not safe the way it used to be. Maybe now certain things have become codified and stuff, but it's still, if you compare what the modern sonic palette is compared to what it was 40 years ago, pop music is a lot more abstract and peculiar now, for better and worse. I do think in some cases the ability to just write a song is not venerated in the way that it used to be, and there's a part of me that would love for just like good old fashioned songwriting to be respected in the same way. But there's this other thing that's been going on, and I think, you know, MFTJ is not a songwriter record.
Right.
It's a sort of like an adventurous sonic experience that has a lot of life to it, just a lot of vitality, a lot of humor, and I think that you know, it comes down to, you know, Scott Shore just being really crafty and creative with just this huge bleh that I provided. You know, I gave him like a vast well of stuff to draw from, and he created, you know, really interesting, fun tracks out of it. And it's this, you know, I think it's a breezy listen. It's 10 tracks. It goes by in 40 minutes. You know, like good old fashioned album length. And because it's not hugely long, I find that when it's over, I want to just go back to the beginning and start listening again. Right. So I think it's just a really cool record. I'm really happy to be involved in it.
So where can people find you know, more information, but more importantly, where can they buy the download of MFTJ?
It's only available on Bandcamp, mftj.bandcamp.com, and that's the only place that it's available. It is fun music that is adventurous, but, you know, it has aspects of the bizarre, but it's not overly bizarre. It's just fun, you know. Please check it out.